So it's 2026 and Edgars is on the rise. They are hiring. They are even increasing output. But to understand their story, you need to go back to their founding. 1946, the first flagship store in then Southern Rhodesia. They survived the sanction-busting days of the early 70s, mid-70s. They survived ESA, the Economic Structural Adjustment Program, which laid waste to a lot of Zimbabwean companies. They even survived the chaos that came after the land reform program of 2000s. We're talking inflation, hyperinflation, the power cut, rampant unemployment, economy collapsing. Today they are even competing with international powerhouses like Shein, Temu. That's for the fashionable young person. They're also competing in the professional space, dressing your teachers, nurses, doctors. We want to understand how is it they've excelled, not just survived, in the globalized economy. So today they are known as Edgars Stores Limited, and they are a leading powerhouse in the fashion industry. Originally they were founded by Mr. Sidney Press in 1946, their first store opening then, and then they were incorporated formally as a company in November 1948. In the years that followed, they cemented their position in the local market. Actually saw them have key acquisitions, acquiring Carlosol Clothing Factory in 1974, and years later, Jeans Company in 1993, cementing their place in the domestic market. These acquisitions clearly show the objective and strategic vision of Edgars. They want to be in the retail sector, wanted to own production. They wanted to be the manufacturing press. So from my point of view as a spectator in the modern age and as a historian, looking back in hindsight, I can see that Edgars has always been about the consumer's dignity. They've always been about that choice. They've always been about that style. So looking back in hindsight, in 1984, Edgars launches the brand Express. The first flagship store is in Harare, Julius Nyerere Way. Over the years, there's considerable growth and it's a hit, and by 1988, they have a total of 24 Express outlets. Now, it's important to analyze and see the growth of the Zimbabwean population by then and the structure of it. You had people getting into the civil service. You had the professional uptick in the Zimbabwean economy. Basing a lot on these credit sales and the growth in the economy, Edgars was on a firm footing. So, in line with maintaining their brand and their visibility, we see, fast forward in 2011, Edgars breaks down the Express brand into two, Express Mart and Jet Stores. Jet Stores offering the more premium stuff, slightly off at a higher price point, and Express Mart, the more affordable deals, in tandem with the economy, in tandem with the competition. Good quality but better pricing. So fast forward to April 2019, we see Edcon, the South African shareholder, sell its shares to Sahara Capital Group and Belfield Limited. There had been challenges in the Zimbabwean economy, pricing issues, increased competition from the informal sector. I believe they felt they had to exit. So the new shareholders, actually operating Edgars Zimbabwe, purchased some brands from Edcon, such as Jet Brands, instantly expanding their market share in the country. They are clearly confident of what they can do in the local market. They are not fazed by the difficulties and they seem to be moving along. So the headquarters of the company had always been in Bulawayo, at the corner of 9th Avenue and Herbert Chitepo Street, at the imposing corporate building. The story in the community was the same. The fears were familiar. This was another industrial giant leaving the city of kings and relocating to the distant yet remote capital Harare. This was going to be the end of more jobs. So the transition of headquarters from Bulawayo to Harare, though it did happen in the leadership of the CEOs and CFOs from 2020 to October 2023, it still kind of reflects the shift from the leadership that left office in October 2023 to the new leadership that took office from then up until this time. The duo, which left by end of October 2023, had faced a number of issues. During their tenure, they had to deal with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, the geopolitical tensions of 2022, and the general economic decline which had been happening since 2019. During the COVID-19 pandemic, you talked about inflation which surpassed the rates of like 500%. In 2020 alone, you saw the Zim currency lose about 80% of its value. In 2023, we had currency pressures. Forex disbursement was slow, and the persistent inflation simply eroded customers' earnings, and it really just depressed demand. Although there had been profit after tax in 2022 and the full year of 2023, The margins were some of the lowest that have been seen in over a decade. At some point during this time period, the government imposed an overnight interest rate of 200%, though it did reduce it to 150 later on. The company now faced a significant challenge. These record high interest rates directly impacted their credit sales. As we know, traditionally, the backbone of Edgars' earnings are from credit sales. To try and address the situation, Edgars #1 at the time decided to stop borrowing in local currency but resorting to borrowing in US dollars. The approach didn't really work though. As we know, civil servants are primarily paid in local currency, Zimbabwean dollars at the time. Historically, credit sales had accounted for as much as 75% of Edgars' total sales. Now, with the primary currency being US dollars, Edgars saw sales drastically drop, at some point going as low as 25%, though rebounding to 40%. Shareholders were not satisfied, and then they decided at that point they needed a leadership change. Now, the new CEO who came in 2023, November 2023, is Mr. Xavier Mshosho, a very strong character. When he was asked about one of the pressurizing elements in the market, the second-hand clothes market, I'll paraphrase. He said that it wasn't their market. He said that their customers deserve to shop in decent spaces and in good environments and to have decent clothes. He also mentioned that all of their clothes were original. Edgars isn't really concerned about that space.